from the standpoint of the United States and the U.S. outlook that the decline we have seen in oil prices is likely to be on net a positive. It's something that's certainly good for families, for households. It's putting more money in their pockets.
See right there, Janet Yellen talking about oil prices. Big year 2014 when it comes to business. America was getting down to business. Monthly job growth has been the strongest since 1999. You have to go back to 2008 since we've seen an unemployment rate of 5.8%. And we put Brian Mudd to work to come up with the top business stories of the past 12 months. Brian hosts the incredibly popular WJNO morning show, The Morning Rush in South Florida. And welcome to Midpoint, Brian. Good to see you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me today.
You know, a lot of talk this year about the economy, obviously, but also income inequality. And it still seems like there's a segment of our population that really hasn't reaped the benefits of this recovery.
You know, it's an interesting thing we're seeing that is playing out with regard to Americans generally. If you go all the way back, we remember the onset of the Tea Party, right? It began really with Rick Santelli and this whole kind of statement on the government folks and versus the people and how the role of government was playing out as it pertained to people. And that became the conservative movement. Then you had the Occupy Wall Street movement that galvanized many, that also led to where we are in the income inequality argument. Well, Occupy Wall Street was really a story of 2013, but into 2014, what we've seen is that you can't get away from it anymore, and it became mainstream. Obviously, the protests that you see dominating the fast food industry, along with many other lower paying job industries, a lot of retail, Walmart's been targeted, that gets attention. But there are other things as well that you don't necessarily see in the headlines every day. But Coca-Cola's executive plan was challenged and overridden. Warren Buffett got in the crosshairs because activist shareholders said, hey, these executives are making too much. So a big part of the debate actually has moved forward and has advanced, and now you're seeing that corporations are having to answer to the income inequality issue in this country.
If the middle class is going to make some advancements over the last couple of months, it has been with gas prices, I should say the last couple of weeks. That's helping everybody. Talk about that. That's one of your big stories of 2014 as well.
Yeah, that actually, and there are a couple things that play into this. The dollar is one of them. There are two facets to any commodity, and gas and oil are obviously commodities. You have supply and demand. That's what we're all taught. The other part of it is your dollar, though, the dollar that's in your pocket. And one of the untold stories, really, of 2014 has been that the dollar in your pocket, compared to the average rest of the world currencies, is worth 13% more today than it was a year ago today. The U.S. dollar index, which is valued against other leading world currencies, up 13%. And a lot of that has had to do with the Federal Reserve tapering, limiting the amount of money printing, so to speak, or digitizing of money that was watering down the U.S. dollar supply. Once that started happening, you saw the U.S. dollar begin to strengthen. So you have more buying power in your pocket right now that will go farther to bring down the price of oil before supply and demand factors, and then the U.S. energy boom. We are producing 4 million more barrels of oil per day in the United States than we were in 2008. We're producing the most oil that we have since 1986. And also, another undertold story, we are actually using less gas in the United States, despite the recovery of the past 4 years, than we were 4 years ago through fuel efficiency, often in automobiles. So we see demand that has come down. The United States in particular, that is on the precipice of becoming the world's latest oil producer, and the dollar in your pocket is worth more. And that is a real positive catalyst that has been a story both for consumers and businesses alike throughout the course of 2014.
Well, you talk about these gains right now at the United States with the dollar and oil, but our gain is actually Russia's pain. They're having a difficult time with the ruble and also with the oil prices.
You're right. So the value of Russia's currency is down more than 50% this year. The only thing that did worse than that in the currency world was Bitcoin, which is a story for another day. It was down more
Did that make your top 10?
That would maybe be my number 6.
Okay.
Because cryptocurrencies did not fare well this year. But you're right. Russia is obviously feeling the pain because you have so many of these leading economies around the world that are so hedged and tied to oil that, they're getting squeezed along with us. The game that's being played right now on that front, though, is that the cost of production in the United States is much higher than most of the rest of the world. So while they're doing worse because their economies are more hedged to it, the OPEC nations, Russia, which you mentioned, the game they're trying to play with oil prices being as low as they are right now, they're actually hoping that some U.S. producers will go out of business, they will regain market share, and when prices rise, they won't have as much competition.
Well, American companies are going to need some more money to try to fight and fend off these cyber hackers. Data breaches at Target and Home Depot, what happened with Sony, the iCloud scandal. Talk about that a little bit. Computer insecurity, really a major theme in 2014.
It's really hard to walk into any boardroom or into any executive suite and say, spend whatever it takes to get the job done, and they go, okay, do that. But that's what we're seeing in cybersecurity. It was this time last year, the whole situation with Target was playing out. We all remember how that went down, and the hard cost to Target right now, just in having to reimburse, is over $400 million. By the time they get done with this fiasco, and it's still playing out, not to mention the reputational risk, they're over $1 billion. Home Depot is into the hundreds of millions of dollars of now with their situation. Sears and Kmart, likewise, in a similar boat. So you have the hard cost, you have the reputational risk, and so companies are needing to do whatever they can to secure their networks, not just for their own corporate security, but also because of the implications of what happens to their customers if something goes wrong. And that is the one area that is, as we see in the news every day, you know, the most recent event being the Sony situation. That's only going to grow in the future.
The hackers are getting smarter. Please tell us that we're getting smarter. Are there mechanisms in place for us to sort of stop these hackers, even on an individual computer user's standpoint?
You know, when you're talking about stopping hackers, it's always a game. You know, it's the catch me if you can thing, right? Because you have to be reactive to a certain point within cybersecurity to what the threat is. So it's anticipating the threat. So kind of as like the story in the movie of Catch Me Like You Can, you do have a lot of the top security firms like the FireEyes of the world out in Silicon Valley in Palo Alto Networks that are actually bringing in some of those factions, the folks that they believe they can trust that might have been inclined towards the hacker mindset previously or might have been outright hackers to try to figure out, okay, based upon where we are today, where do you think they'll go next to try to put up these types of firewalls and the encryption necessary so that we can be somewhat proactive. But, you know, it's like anything in crime. You can be as proactive as you want, but there's always going to be somebody trying to figure out a way around it.
Yes, indeed. I have a feeling this cybersecurity issue is only going to get bigger. Major issue in 2014. We're going to see what happens in 2015. We didn't get a chance to talk about the ACA, but of course that is one of your top 5 as well. So Brian Mudd from WJNO Radio, one of the most popular stations here in South Florida, and that's going to do it for this segment. Coming up, the top trending social media topics and hashtags of 2014 for this Wednesday edition of Midpoint.